Scene fades in of intertidal area. Text on screen, Bartlett Cove, Alaska, Glacier Bay National Park. Green deciduous trees make up the background, and brown algae sticks out of a light current in the intertidal water. Text on screen, Ranger Steve, Glacier Bay National Park. Ranger Steve stands amongst the intertidal zone wearing a green NPS uniform and tan flat hat. He also wears brown rubber boots.
Well, good morning, virtual visitors. Emma and I will be taking you out on a tide pool walk. It is low tide here in Glacier Bay National Park, and as you can see, I am standing in the midst of an intertidal area. This area is filled with life that depends upon the tides, but at low tide, they still remain in this area, and that's what we're going to explore today. You can do this at home. Just find a place that is influenced by the tide if you live by the coast, but almost any area you can explore virtually.
Ranger Steve refers to a whiteboard with tide pool etiquette written on it. 5 rules are written in dry erase marker. He proceeds to go through each rule.
I'd like to just go through some tide pool etiquette, and these are just some rules that pay respect to the creatures that we will be interacting with. The first rule is explore tide pools from the edge, and you can see I am standing on the edge of a tide pool right in front of me, and I am going to keep to the edge. I'm not going to walk through the middle of the pool because that will disturb life that lives in these tide pools. The second etiquette rule that I will make sure I enforce is step on bare rocks wherever possible. And this is very important in the intertidal zone because many areas are covered with life, but also algae or seaweed grow in many of these areas, and it is very slippery. So I want to take care of myself, but I also want to take care of the animals around me.
He bends down to closely inspect a tide pool.
The third one is when I'm turning over a rock, I want to be careful. If you look very closely at a lot of these rocks in the intertidal zone, they are covered with creatures. Barnacles and mussels live upon these rocks. So if I'm going to turn over a rock, I want to be careful of the life on both sides and if I flip it over. And then one of the rules, I don't have it written up here, but if I turn over this rock, when I am finished exploring, I will turn it back and leave it back in place because the creatures living under there need that shelter. The fourth rule that I will follow is that never force an animal free of its foothold or where it's stationed. And that is best shown with the barnacles. Barnacles glue themselves to the rocks, so I'm not going to force the barnacles off the rock itself. A good test is if you just touch the creature and wiggle it a little bit. If it's free, you can pick it up. If it's not free, you just leave it there. And then the fifth rule that I will follow in my tide pool etiquette is whenever I'm going to touch a creature, I will wet my hands with the water itself. So I'm going to wet my hands if I'm going to touch the barnacles or the mussels or even some of the creatures lower down in this region.
Cut to Ranger Steve standing in the same area.
I just wanted to remind you, besides the tide pool etiquette, during these times, we also practice our social distancing, and please follow your local guidelines concerning COVID-19.
Text on screen, Ranger Emma, Glacier Bay National Park. Ranger Emma stands amongst the intertidal zone wearing a National Park Service green uniform and tan flat hat.
Welcome to Bartlett Cove, an area affectionately known as the Cut and a great place to go tide pooling. I'm excited to explore this area today, hoping to see some chitons, maybe some sea stars, and anything else we might discover.
Cut to a time lapse of rangers inspecting tide pools in fast motion. Another scene of Ranger Steve looking down at his feet near tide pools. Another clip of Ranger Steve reaching into the water. The camera pans over to show Ranger Emma lifting up a rock to inspect the critters underneath.
You got some lined ones?
Some lined ones. Yep. Ooh, here's something flipped. There's a sculpin or something in here. And a sea cucumber.
Cut to a closer view of the turned over rock.
So we turned over this rock, and there's a few different things down here. Some sort of sea cucumber, and it looks like there might be a mass of eggs right next to it. So we'll want to turn this back over soon. A line chiton, and I believe a gumboot chiton, and perhaps some limpets covered with barnacles. And then also a couple sea stars, including a 6-legged sea star right there. Sea stars can have any number of legs, usually 5, but it can go all the way up to 50 in some species.
Cut to a close-up of a gray rock covered in various intertidal creatures. The sea cucumber is orange and pink. The chitons are dark brown and various other colors. The sea star with 6 legs is a tannish brown color. Cut to Ranger Steve standing in ankle-deep water. Brown, long-leafed algae flows slowly in the current as he points to a sea anemone underwater.
Down below in the water here, we have a sea anemone with its tentacles out. Sea anemones are living creatures, even though they look like a flower. And sea anemones are closely related to sea jellies with the tentacles. This creature is just waiting for something to blunder into its tentacles. Should something touch its tentacles, the tentacles have these microscopic nematocysts or stinging cells that will harpoon that creature, and then it will suck it down into the middle of the creature's area, or the middle of its tentacles, and that's where its mouth is. So this is a sea anemone, and the common name for this sea anemone is the Christmas sea anemone because of its red and green coloration.
A close-up shows several sea anemones attached to a dark rock. There are 2 red anemones and 1 orange. More clips are shown of Rangers Steve and Emma exploring tidal pools. Ranger Emma turns over a rock. She picks it up out of the water to inspect it more closely. A close-up shows several urchins, 4 chitons, 1 sea star, all attached to a speckled brown black rock.
So here's some purple and green urchins, some more lined chitons. You can see those little plates on their back. They actually have about 8 of them.
Cut to Ranger Steve, kneeling down and pointing at an underwater sea star.
So during my tide pool etiquette, we talked about don't force a creature off of its holdfast. And one good example of that is the ochre sea star. They cling with their tube feet to substrates. If it was on a rock, it would be very hard to remove it. But here's one in the water that has small rocks. And I'm picking the ochre sea star up and picking up the rocks that it's holding on to as well. So if it's on a sandy substrate, it's very easy to pick up these creatures. These creatures are the predators in the intertidal zone, and what they prey upon are small shellfish, sea urchins, blue mussels, and also barnacles. And here we have the ochre sea star with an open mussel shell. It probably fed upon that creature a while ago.
Cut to Ranger Steve, kneeling in the water several feet away from the sea star, pointing at underwater vegetation.
Besides the animal life, we do have some plant life in this area, and they're all in the algae grouping. This green algae is often referred to as sea lettuce. It is loose, it comes off loose, but it's very translucent, the beautiful green coloration. And I've heard that this is edible, but yeah, you do have to wash it off. But here in the park, I'm not going to feed upon it. I'm going to leave it for the creatures. Other types of algae or seaweeds people refer to, we have this brown one, and this is called seersucker kelp. It has that seersucker texture on the frond itself. And then I believe this one is called alaria. Has a very reinforced midrib, and it's very fine or delicate fronds on both sides of that. We do have some coralline algae. The pink algae is very hard. It's not very flowing like these other algae, but the pink coralline algae adheres directly to the rocks. And I can pick up the rock with some of that coralline algae. All right. And it's this material right here. Looks like it's a lichen attached to the rock, but this is an algae.
Ranger Steve picks up a small rock the size of a fist with pink algae growing on it, and he drops it back where he found it underwater.
So it's always fun and exciting, even to turn over the algae, because you might find some creatures amongst.
He bends down to spread algae leaves out of the way.
Itself.
Cut to a close-up of hands holding a rock covered in intertidal creatures, including limpets, chitons, and a sea star.
So you can see some examples of some very small line chitons, a small sea star as well, and at the top of the rock there, a little bit of that red coralline algae, and that's what the chitons eat. They have some teeth on the bottom of their body, that part that's attached to the rock there, called radula, that scrape away at that very hard red algae. So their food and shelter are right in the same spot right there on that rock.
So,
Cut to Ranger Steve kneeling at water's edge with a clear plastic tub in front of him. There are 2 small urchins in the plastic tub underwater.
one exciting way to look at the creatures in the intertidal zone is to bring a plastic container with you. And I put some creatures in here that I found in the kelp, and these are sea urchins. And sea urchins feed directly on the kelp. This is their main food source. Sea urchins, and they're very easy
He picks up an urchin.
or delicate to pick up. They do not attach too heavily to the substrate. But sea urchins, many people will call them pin cushions because covering their body are the spines. Sea urchins do feed upon the kelp. They are grazers. They're very similar to cattle in the intertidal zone. But their mouth is on the underside of their bodies. And if I flip this body over of the sea urchin, their mouth is right in the center of their shell or their protective coating. Their mouth is divided into 5 parts, and I have one that I found earlier today from a dead sea urchin. It's on my Tupperware container. And the way it works is very similar to your hand or your fingers, and the 5 pieces would come together. Many naturalists refer to the mouth of the sea urchin as Aristotle's lantern, and I think that's probably in reference to its shape or the way it looks. So we can get a close look at the mouth part of the sea urchin.
Cut to a close-up of the sea urchin mouth, followed by a clip of the 2 sea urchins in the plastic tub. Short tentacles wave out from the urchin's body as they slowly move along the plastic surface. Cut to Ranger Steve kneeling on the shore with the plastic tub in front of him again. There are 2 small hermit crabs in the tub.
One of the creatures that shows a lot of action in the intertidal zone is the hermit crabs. And hermit crabs are called the hermit crabs because they seem to be always on the lookout for a new home. They need seashells or snail shells to protect the back of their body. And this is also a great use of these plastic tubs because when you pick up a hermit crab, they sort of pull their body into the seashell, so they don't show much action in my hand. But should I put it into a little drop of water, a little pool of water, they will quickly start becoming active. And as I say that, they are both in their shell. Ooh, here comes one out, and he will start walking around.
Cut to a close-up of the 2 hermit crabs in the plastic tub, shuffling around. Another scene shows white and green dots on a brown rock. These are young barnacles growing on the rock. Next to this rock is a dark gray rock covered in tan and brown barnacles that are in the adult stage.
What we're looking at right now are baby barnacles, and they are referred to as spat, but the baby barnacles, they're looking for a place to settle down, and this is one of the creatures that we will not disturb in the intertidal walk. Barnacles, we have some right here in front of me. These are more adult, but they permanently glue themselves to the rock themselves, so I'm not going to scrape these off. I'm not going to try to pick them up. We're just going to enjoy them from a distance, but you can touch them. At low tide, they shut themselves up, but at high tide, when the water covers this, they will extend their feet, and they will use their feet to filter out the water and to draw food into their mouths.
Cut to a clip of a white barnacle with reddish-brown feet flapping in the water, reaching for nutrients.
We have a creature on the other side of this rock called a whelk. And it is a predator. It's feeding upon the barnacles, and I'm going to see if it's loose enough to dislodge so I can show the camera.
Ranger Steve kneels in ankle-deep water beside a medium-sized rock. He reaches down and pulls out a brown and tan shell.
Oh yes, it came off pretty easily. The whelk is a type of snail, and this is a carnivore. They will feed upon the barnacles and the mussels in the intertidal zone. Snail, he is pulled his body into side, and he has his operculum blocking the entrance. This is a predatory snail known as the whelk.
Ranger Steve gingerly places the whelk back under the rock. Cut to Ranger Emma reaching into the current to pull out a rock to place in a plastic tub. A new scene shows a close-up of a plastic tub with several critters attached to a rock. A five-legged sea star is squirming its long, flexible legs to move across the plastic surface.
And you can also really see on their body that star shape of that central area. Sea stars move at a variety of different speeds. This is one of the faster ones. But you can see how with those super flexible legs it really moves. They have little suction cups underneath their feet, and they use those to help pull themselves along.
A close-up of a bright orange sea cucumber with its arms extended for feeding. A clip looking down at the tidal floor shows a dozen or so sea urchins of various colors. Another clip shows a sea star with clear water running over it. A final clip shows a rock turned over with limpets, chitons, snails, barnacles, and other sea life. Cut to Ranger Steve, standing in ankle-deep intertidal water.
Hi, this is Ranger Steve, and I'd like to thank you for joining us on this virtual intertidal walk. We'll see you in the future.
Cut to Ranger Emma, speaking from the intertidal zone.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this virtual exploration. We hope you enjoyed it. Please let us know in the comments what you really enjoyed or what you're excited about, or post any questions you have as well. If you want to see more, let us know. Thanks for joining us.
Fade to black. NPS Arrowhead fades in, Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve. Thanks for watching. Comment/let us know if you're interested in more videos like this. Music by, in order of play, David Helowitz, Gradual Sunrise, David Helowitz, First Day of Spring, Fanboy, Patagonia, David Helowitz, Chance Encounter, and finally, David Helowitz with Angle of Light. NPS Video, Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve. Special thanks to Ranger Emma and Ranger Steve. Fade to black. A scene fades in of calmly moving water through the intertidal zone.